Hey everyone, happy Wednesday. Hey, it's my favorite day of the week, and welcome to On the Record. We are here live in the studio. I'm here with Laura Byrne, who is the editor-in-chief of Tampa Bay Parenting Magazine.
Yep.
So happy to have you here. And we have a jam-packed show today in Studio B. If we could go to that shot, we also have Ana de Jesus and her adorable 10-year-old daughter, Sophia. Oh my gosh,
They're
hi
so
guys.
cute.
They're adorable. So we're going to be coming to you guys too in the second half of the show. I love the show because we're all former traditional television journalists and basically reinventing our career for the passion of family. In fact, my little Sammy is in here right now.
In the background, she's doing a great job. A+.
A+, Sam, ma'am. She's doing with her friend Riley Tabone. They're doing my social media for me today. Laura, let's see. I'm having some issues with my IFB, guys, if we can. I love live TV because can you hear yourself on here a little bit?
No, I can't, but I do remember that would happen. The weirdest thing, right? People don't realize sometimes when they're watching the things that can go wrong, that when we're in the moment of it, and you just kind of go with it, right?
I know, we have to go with it.
The biggest lessons TV taught us.
Exactly, exactly. So now you are the editor of Tampa Bay Parenting Magazine. So let's talk about that, Laura. I mean, wow, you have two amazing children of your own. So tell us about your journey, why you left television and started this career.
You know, we were just talking about this too. When I left TV, I was a full-time reporter for, gosh, I mean, probably 15 plus years. Then I got pregnant with my first, and I was supposed to come back when my maternity leave was over. My 12 weeks came up, and my news director called and were like, when are you going to be coming back? And at that point, you know, every woman's journey with pregnancy and those first few months is different. Mine was an exhausting one for whatever reason. It was much easier the second time around, but my first baby, he didn't sleep. We struggled with breastfeeding. So there were a lot of things going on. And I knew in my heart, I was like, I just can't come back to full-time work. There's just no schedule that's going to fit and work for me because I was so tired. And the concept of going back to live TV was just was a little scary.
And you were working the morning show as well.
Working the morning show, yeah. So I made that decision that I wasn't going to come back. I did end up freelancing there for many years up until the pandemic. Haven't really done much since then. So it was a little bit of able to step back for a little bit, but it was just unfortunately it was just a sudden decision for me that I wasn't quite ready for. I was ready to go back. I wanted to go back, but once that decision time came, my body was just telling me no.
You just couldn't do it. Isn't that something though? And you're right, like every single person has to make that decision on their own, but you never expected to make that phone call to your news director and say, hey, listen, Peter Roger, right at the time, I'm not coming back.
Hi, Peter. I know. And, and it really did. It worked out for the best. Everything happens for a reason. And I thought about going back many times, and it was just kind of, it just isn't. I think that chapter of my life has closed, but this new one that I'm in right now is pretty awesome.
Yeah, so let's talk about this new chapter. And so as you and I both know, Laura, going back to TV too, so much of it now is not traditional television, right?
Yeah.
Or traditional print. But Tampa Bay Parenting Magazine, you do have a printed issue.
Yep.
And how is that going?
It's going great, and I think it's because our target audience it's very small. We're talking about parents, especially parents with children who are 12 and younger, and that's the life that I'm living right now. My oldest is 8, my youngest just turned 6 years old a couple days ago.
Happy birthday.
And I know, happy birthday, baby. And at first I was like, I don't know, is print dead? Is it? And it really isn't.
It isn't.
There is a space for it. We are doing, it's been successful. We've survived through the pandemic, and we're just ready, looking forward to the future. But it's been a lot of fun. It was different though. It's a different type of storytelling. And we go from TV to print, and you're like, oh, it'll be easy. But it's not as easy as you would think. There are other things that I had to think of, like fonts, colors? How is it going to print with a printer? How is with layout? How will it look? And we do have we have an amazing team behind us. This isn't something that I do all by myself. I would never take credit for everything. We have, an amazing sales team. We have an amazing Sarah, who does all of our layout and just makes our magazine look terrific. And it takes all of us together. My husband, who helps with sales, it's a team effort. So I can't say it's all me.
How do you find the stories, though? And, we're showing some amazing pictures of, your family, of course. And, I love these.
I know this was a recent scalloping adventure that we did a plantation on Crystal River. That's when we went to go see a rocket launch. Basically everything we do is a story, right? As a family, that there are so many different things for families to do around town, and I'm able to share that with our audience so that they can also experience those things with their kids. And, trying to take a photo shoot with kids, impossible. Mine do not, This is another thing. So I'm able to bring them on a lot of stories too, which never would have happened in TV news. I often bring them, and this is one of my freelance days back in the day when I was with Channel 10 about a couple of years ago.
Which is the Channel 10, for those folks who may not know, is the local CBS station in the Tampa St. Petersburg market. Because I'm so flattered by this that I have people now that are watching, all over the world. In fact, I had someone from Los Angeles just reach out to me yesterday after seeing the show. And I'm going to be interviewed for them over there.
Great.
But about women, about female entrepreneurs, and about being able to reinvent yourself. So how hard was that, though, for you, as well?
First, and as you know, when you spend many years as a television news journalist, and it almost becomes part of your identity of who you are. And you sacrifice a lot. We're talking about time away from family, working holidays, not making a whole lot of money. There are other things that maybe I could have done and maybe been a little bit more financially, better off early on in the career, especially.
And can we talk about that for just a second? Because there is this impression out there. I feel like people hear, oh, well, you're on television, or you're a television maker. You must be making, so much. You're not. Honestly, my first job, it was $18,000 a year in the Quad Cities.
It may have been less than that, my first job. And I made more working at the mall, let's put it that way, because at least I made a commission, right? But I knew we knew we were getting into, and we knew that there would be that payoff one day eventually. But when you suddenly leave, it's like, gosh, now what? Because in a way, you kind of grew up thinking you have one career and that's it, right? And then you retire. But that's not the way life is anymore.
There's so many chapters,
so
of
many.
life.
And it's been fun to kind of make that next step and start anew.
Yes. And so, so Tampa Bay Parenting Magazine, what type of stories do you look for? Who are your contributors to the magazine? And I remember we were meeting for coffee like a week or 2 weeks ago, and you're like, oh my gosh, I have this deadline. I have got to get to this. I've got to get it to print.
And that's the thing. It's like, there are still deadlines. They're not those daily or even hourly deadlines that we used to have back in the day, but we can't just hold up the presses for one story. The magazine has to go to print at a certain time, and just like when the show has to go on at a certain time. But we work with some amazing local writers, and my sniff test for a story is it local? Is it Tampa Bay? Is it written by somebody local? Because it is a community magazine. It's not my magazine. This is a magazine for everybody. And I always encourage people, reach out, pitch a story, because we might end up doing it.
So the masses out there, you're saying, if there is someone out there that thinks, hey, this is a great story, they should reach out to you.
Absolutely. Editor@tvparenting.com. Even my personal email, Laura, Laura, @tvparenting.com. Reach out and pitch the story, because I don't know everything that's going on. I count on other people to tell me what's going on. I know a lot about what's going on because I do get to have those conversations with a lot of different people and influencers and bloggers in town. And, but it's just like, tell me the stories, just like in the real newsroom. We have, right? You have viewers.
You would go into a meeting and you would pitch stories, and we would hear stories. People would always ask me, how do you come up with the stories? Well, there are certain stories, you have to cover in traditional news, but most of the stories came from hearing from people in the community, pitching the story in an editorial meeting, and doing that story of the day. I want to go back, though, to something that you said about print not being dead, because So the Tampa Bay Times, which again a very respected paper, nationally respected paper, has even scaled down on their actual printing. Right,
Yeah.
it's only Wednesday and Sunday. So what would you say to those people who say, "I don't know what she's talking about. I don't know if that's necessarily true."
There are some people out there who are going to have those opinions because they're probably in digital media, right? Because they want that to be the thing. And it's fine. Yes, digital media has its place and a very big place. And so does social media, but there is still room for that print. There is nothing quite like that feeling of being able to hold something in your hand and read it. And it's more, your attention is more grasped toward it. Think about it when you're online, you're reading a story. There's a lot of distractions going on, right? A lot of other things happening.
All those ads that
or
are
you
popping
forget,
up.
and you saw a story, then you forget where it was. With a magazine or a book, you can pick up, and there it is. It's still right there. And so it's kind of neat that we're able to kind of continue the tradition of print magazines. And again, there are a lot of regional magazines throughout the country, and many of them didn't quite make it through the pandemic. It was a really tough year, but there are a lot that that are still here, they're still around, and I definitely encourage you to pick up that print magazine. And you almost retain I know studies have shown when you read something on paper, that's why with children too, especially with books, they're going to retain that knowledge.
That's so interesting. That's really interesting. Like, and I have to say too, I prefer actually being able to hold something, actually being able to see something.
Yeah.
But that is perfect. Oh, I'm sorry. That is perfect that you mentioned that because I know the books,
the ink.
But Anna De Jesus and Sophia, who we're going to talk to in the second half of the show, they wrote a couple of books.
Yes.
So what a great segue, because before we go to the commercial break, though, Laura, I wanted to ask you, and of course you're going to stay here in the studio and also ask some questions while I go to Studio B. But for other mothers out there, or you had to reinvent your career, walk away from something that you really, studied for, cherished, loved.
Yeah.
Now, granted, you and I and Anna, I think we're all working in a space where we still get to use some of that creativity.
Absolutely.
But what advice would you have to moms out there?
Just don't be afraid, and don't be afraid to reach out to people who are doing what you want to do and ask, how did they do it? How did you get here? How did you reinvent yourself? And it's hard to sometimes be confident to go out there and start over again, essentially, especially when it comes to your career. But it absolutely is possible. You just have to let that negative voice in your head, just try to silence it as much as you can, and that you can do this. And there is room for you out there. And it's not like, we may not be for everybody, but we are for somebody. And you know what I mean? So you can't be something for everybody, but you can go out there and reinvent yourself, and there is going to be an audience out there for you.
And what about the financial aspect of it? What about the financial aspect of, it's scary. Like when you work at a job, you get a paycheck. In 2 weeks you're going to get a paycheck.
Yep.
But to be an entrepreneur, what advice would you have on that?
You are your own boss, and if you want to make it happen, you have to do it. That was the one big difference. I was used to having a producer or a news director or an assignment editor waiting for me to, if I didn't get it done, that was going to be write the job on the line, essentially. But when you work for yourself, if you don't get it done, the person you're disappointing most is yourself, and that's going to impact you. So you just the time management is a completely different ballgame when you're working for yourself. And that's one thing you just kind of have to, because if you don't get it done, you're not going to get paid. Or, you know what I mean?
Right.
So, it's kind of like that in real life too, but it's when you don't get something done, you are letting yourself down. It's almost harder to disappoint yourself than it is someone else sometimes too.
Absolutely.
When you have these big dreams.
Well, you're a role model, and stay here because we have so much more to talk to you about. But we're going to go to a break, and I'm going to head into Studio B to talk to Anna and Sophia. So stay with us. We'll be right back. I'm Sarina Fazan, a journalist, producer, and podcast host. With a background in television news, I know how much time and talent it takes to produce a broadcast quality production. But no more. Red House Streaming offers a simple, cost-effective method for capturing live action and streaming it in real time to YouTube, Facebook, or any other website. From single camera shoots or multi-camera productions, conventional or virtual sets. And from the state-of-the-art Red House Streaming Studios to remote locations, the professional crew at Red House Streaming, backed by the technology and reputation of CP Communications, allows you to produce more content at a lower cost and with little to no engineering required. That's why my podcast, On the Record with Sarina Fazan, is streamed live from the Red House Streaming Studios each week. Contact Red House Streaming today at 800-762-4254 or online at cpcoms.com to learn more. I'll see you in the studio. Hi guys, welcome back to On the Record, and here we are in Studio B with Ana de Jesus and her beautiful daughter Sophia. Sophia with the PH, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yes. She's definitely, she's already a journalist, but
yes,
already, and
she loves the camera.
That's awesome. Thank you so much for being so patient too while we did the first half of the show.
Absolutely.
So Ana, Laura, we all know each other through traditional TV. So tell us a little bit about yourself and, oh my gosh, your amazing adventure that you walked away from TV and started something pretty amazing yourself.
Yes, well, just like you and Laura, I spent 15 plus years as a television news reporter and loved it. Lived and breathed television news, loved telling people stories, and, you know, I became a mom. And, you know, when I was pregnant with Sophia, I tell her all the time, at 9 months pregnant, I could barely climb in the live truck. Like, the photographers would have to, like, help me into the live truck because I was so pregnant. And then I would get to, like, a crime scene. And I can remember one time a deputy saying, "Why are you here?" Like, and I'm like, "I'm just working." And I'm like, you know, out to here and got my notepad going. And I really, really loved it. I was very passionate about it. When Sophia turned 1, my contract was up and I had the hardest decision ever. Was I going to renew and continue my dream, what I had worked so hard for my whole life and had moved, you know, from station to station, working my way up to Tampa and to Bay News 9 where I met my husband. And she was a year old. And I'll never forget, you know, when she was 5 months old, I missed her rolling over because I was out on a news story and I was heartbroken. So when my contract came up at a year, it was the toughest decision ever, especially telling my bosses who I loved. But I said, you know what, it's time. I've done everything possible. I have, you know, gotten to live out my dreams. And now my dream is to be a mom and to be a great mom. And as you said, with our adventure, I have a passion for traveling. So I somehow convinced my husband, let's go to Europe. Let's pack up everything, which we did, and we took a 1-year-old, and we literally traveled Europe for more than 6 months with a couple of suitcases and Sophia in a baby carrier, and we had the most amazing, fantastic time, and we did videos, and we tried to inspire other parents to say, hey, you can travel, because I think that there's this, you know, this thought in people's heads that once you have kids, you're not going to travel anywhere, and you have to have lots of money to do it, versus, you know, we were like, hey, you can do this on a budget, and as long as you do your research, you can find great places, and you can travel with children.
And so you literally then took 6 months off.
Yes.
Just to, Sophia, when you hear your parents did that for you, how does that make you feel, honey?
It makes me feel like special because I think that not many parents would do this.
Yeah, I mean, this is like something that that how many parents would do, but you're saying that you can do it.
Yes. And, you know, Sophia was 1 at the time, but then in 2016, after we had our son, Nicholas, he was 1 at the time, and she was almost 5. We went again, but we only did 7 weeks at the time because she was already in school, so we could only do a summer. But we went around Europe for 7 weeks with the kids. And I love to inspire other families, just to let them know that they can do it. And for us, the trips were even more special because they were shared with our kids. And, you know, some people would say, oh, well, you know, she's not going to remember that she went to 10 countries. But the interesting thing is, she likes to wake up in the morning and she wants croissants.
Wow.
Like,
I can hear Laura laughing in the studio too. It's like, wow, a sophisticated baby.
Yeah, you know, I mean, because as a child, she was like eating baguettes and croissants, and now that's what she wants for breakfast. Like, it influences them in ways we don't know. You know, we are their leaders and their role models, and showing them that anything is possible really does influence them. You know, whether it's her loving to, you know, eat different foods or just her adventure, you know. I don't know if you could see, but she has on like a little necklace with the Eiffel Tower.
Yes, I saw that.
She put on herself this morning,
That's
you know,
so
that
cute.
she wants to go to Paris.
So I know some people though might be watching and thinking, all right, well that everything sounds fantastic, but how can you take that much time off, and financially how do you pull it off?
A lot of planning and a lot of research to do it on a budget. And for us, you know, we do things like have credit cards that have Sky Miles and things that we earn. So if we go every couple of years, we have tickets paid for with our Sky Miles. We do a lot of creative things like that. But after we did take the 6 months, we did come back, and my husband went back into television news, and then I reinvented myself. And I think that's really important. How you guys mentioned, it's about reinventing ourselves. You know, we're not like our parents or our grandparents' generations where you were with a job, you know, for 40 years and then you were retired and, you know, it was difficult to do things. We're in that generation. We can do multiple things now and reinvent ourselves as mommies, as parents. And, you know, I still have broadcasting in my life in different ways. It's not on television, but I continue to reinvent myself with ways that I'm still able to tell stories. And I contribute also to Laura's Tampa Bay Parenting Magazine,
Which is wonderful.
I love telling other families, you know, about adventures and things they can do in the local area.
So tell us, and maybe we can have Sophia tell us about being a published author. You want your mommy to start?
Sure.
I'll start by saying that we did it because Sophia was learning to write. We started in 2018, and she was learning to write, and she loved making her own little books at home. And one day she started giving me some ideas, like we had went to the zoo and she was like, oh, what if, you know, the zoo could come home with us and the animals? And I was like, I think you may have thought of our next idea. So then we decided to write, can I bring home a mermaid? And then for my son, her brother, can I bring home a dinosaur? And if you want to tell her, I mean, now, this morning or last night you were working on a book. This morning you were telling me ideas. You could tell Miss Sarina.
So at home, you know those little book things where it's like already made books and all you gotta do is write idea? I got one of those and I wrote a little story of the missing chocolate cake.
The missing chocolate cake. What a great idea. You hear Laura in there. That's a great idea.
That was her book last night.
The missing chocolate cake.
She comes up with new books every week.
So your books now, and I know you're a contributing author as well for Tampa Bay Parenting Magazine. Where are your books? And one of the books it is about your great escape.
Actually, the two books on there and the two journals are the ones that we did that are just the fiction children's books. The Great Escape, I do write stories on the website and continuous videos. I also teach part-time broadcasting at Sophia's school, so I do a lot of different things, but my books are on Amazon. And in the last year also, I created a business and trademarked the name Sophia and Nicholas for my two kids, and I'm selling products on there, actually selling on Amazon a baby milestone blanket and a toy organizer and some things now, which it was interesting. You know, I like to learn. I'm one of those people where if I don't know how to do something, I will research it and read until I do. And that was the thing with Amazon. I was like, I want to create a baby blanket with this saying that I always told her and my nieces, I love you higher than the sky. Aww. And I created a baby blanket, and then I sell that on Amazon. So it's a fun journey, and you know, I always tell Sophia that my most important job is being a mommy, and I really believe that.
Sophia, how does this make you feel when you're hearing your mom say this?
This makes me feel like, how do I explain? special in more than one ways, because I don't know if lots of mommies do this.
Oh, isn't that the sweetest thing?
I know.
Well,
She's so sweet.
Oh my gosh, look at that. I mean, this is what life is about. I have to say, when Sammy was little, Laura, you'll appreciate this too. When Sammy was little, she thought like every mommy was on TV. Speaking of giving, so she was shocked to learn. She was like, what? Like, your mommy isn't on TV? What are you talking about? So for all of us and for the audience to know, it is something that it's like you're born with it. It's such a passion. And, Anna, what you were talking about, moving from market to market. Laura, you also moved. I never knew Tampa at all. It was that when I got the job here, I'd never been here before. I mean, I landed here because, I got a job here, and then I fell in love with Tampa and decided to stay. So with any profession you have, not just television, journalism, just as I asked Laura, Anna, what would your advice be to other moms out there that might think, oh my gosh, I don't know if I could go back into a traditional role because I'm going to miss out on milestones of my child's life, like when she rolled over. What would you say to them to do?
I'm a big, firm believer in living out your dreams and not having regrets later. And if you want to write a children's book with your kids, go online and start researching it. It's not as hard as it seems. I believe that parents are the role models and they're the leaders for our kids. What we do, they eventually follow. We're setting the example for them, and I think all eyes are always on us. And I hope that, other moms, moms are so talented. We're multitaskers.
We are.
We can do anything. I laugh about with traveling, people would say, oh, is it hard? And I'm like, yeah, it was hard changing a diaper on a high-speed train that was going almost 100 miles an hour. Was it hard? Yeah, but it was so worth the journey. And that's what I would tell, so many people get caught up in what's the destination, but really, what's the journey?
Right.
What is the journey? And walking away from TV was so incredibly hard, but my journey with my kids has been so amazing that, I don't have regrets. I miss it sometimes, but I get to still watch my husband on television and see the great job that, he's doing every day. And he's a very hands-on dad too. So it's a 50-50 partnership. When he gets home from work, he is, helping them study for school and doing all those amazing things. Just such an amazing dad. And, it's great. Him and I often collaborate and think of creative ideas together. And I love sharing my creative ideas with Laura, too.
Yeah, I was going to say.
She's a dear friend of mine, and believe it or not, after I tell my husband my ideas, she's usually one of the first people that I call. And that's also with moms, like moms supporting moms and women supporting women, just reminding each other that we can do anything. When I call Laura, sometimes I'm like, hey, I thought of this idea. and she is always so supportive. And I always thank her for that, because everyone needs that someone, whether it be a friend or a family member, and I'm lucky, my husband and my sister are very supportive too, but she's often a person that, I know she's going to tell me creatively, this will work, it won't work. It's
wonderful.
Yeah.
Jason, in fact, I'm going to call out to our my director. If you could bring up the 2 box now with Laura in the studio, because I would love it if they can bring that up. Oh, great! And if you could keep it up, for the rest of the show, because so Laura, I wanted to ask you, as you hear Anna and Sophia talk, as a publisher, as an editor-in-chief, what are you thinking right now, and what are your thoughts?
My first thing is, a piece of advice maybe that we didn't talk about before, and Anna just spoke about it perfectly, that you need to find your person, right? It could be one, it can be multiple. Just find your mentor, a friend, anyone that you can bounce ideas off of, because it helps bring those ideas to life a little bit more. But Anna, there's one thing about you that I love so much, and I think that would be able to help others out there. It's easy to come up with the idea, but how do you stay motivated to see that idea come to fruition?
You know, it's a really good point. I'm one of those people that when I think of an idea, I get really, really excited about it. And for a long time, I did carry a lot of ideas when I was in news, but I couldn't really act on them. And it was so hard on me inside because I had all these big dreams and all these things that I wanted to do. And even though I was doing my dream, I felt like there was so much more I could do. So I would really say, like, my number one thing is to pull out a piece of paper and write down your ideas. Because sometimes the next day you might not remember exactly how you felt with that idea. And I feel like keeping the emotion alive is really the main thing. I get excited about it. I start writing the ideas about it. I start researching. I think it's to act immediately because if not, you might lose that passion for it a week or 2 weeks down the road, and then you're like, oh, well, I thought of this, but I didn't do it. Versus, okay, stop right now. Let me write this idea down and my ideas, and then start researching it, and then the next day get up and do the same thing. It's really to keep it fresh in your mind and not let it go away.
Yeah. No, that's great advice on
and
on doing
acting
that.
on it. I love that. Because Spanx, did we not all cut pantyhose back in the day?
Exactly. Sarah Blakely.
Why
we
didn't
got to
we
give a
just
shout
act
out to her.
on that?
I know, right? It's
And
like do it.
I follow Sarah Blakely on Facebook and through her other social media because she's a great inspiration. We can look at other people who are doing great things, and maybe we didn't think about that, but they will also trigger us to think of things. And Sophia loves watching Shark Tank with me.
My little Sammy loves, I always say little, she's 14 now, but she loves watching Shark Tank too and getting these ideas. I wanted to say to the both of you too, and talking about, relying on your friends and bringing in your friends. So, and I love that, it's my show, so I can talk about anything I want on the show, right? But this is, I am definitely very, I'm off today because, and this is troubling, darling, but earlier this week I got troubling news, and so talking about leaning on your friends. So there's Charlie Paul, who was my absolute favorite manager at work. He is a department head, has one child, Austin, and Charlie retired early at the age of 57 to spend time, follow his dream, he and his wife Brenda, to spend time with his son. Sadly, this weekend, and it was covered by news, his 25-year-old son passed away in an accident. So, as my friends, as journalists, and I didn't mean to, bring this, but I can tell I'm not myself. As fellow journalists, and we've covered so many stories like this, what do we do to help people through these difficult times? Because everything we've talked about so far too is reinventing our life because of these guys.
Yes.
Right?
The next generation.
Yes.
And first, so sorry to hear about your
Thank
friend's
you.
son.
Yeah, so sorry. That's
just
devastating.
Devastating, yes. And like you said, we cover so many things. One thing about television news is that we see the most horrific things sometimes. You see happy things, but you also see a lot of bad. And, I remember just drawing from those experiences, and learning from them, and then it's helped me base a lot of decisions, going forward. But, going to, just supporting each other, I think, is really answering it the best way, is just letting somebody know that you're there.
Yeah.
Whether they want to talk or they don't want to talk. Yep. You are there for them, and anything that they need, when they're ready to talk, that you're there. I sadly lost a friend December 31st, a college friend, died of COVID. And he was 50 years old. And,
So young.
And we spent a lot of time together in college. He has a 16-year-old daughter. And I was heartbroken. I was absolutely heartbroken, and watched a funeral online. And it was horrible. But talking to other friends and remembering all the great things about him, and I'm Greek, and we always say, may their memory be eternal. And you know what that means is letting their memory live forever, even though they might not be here physically anymore, remembering who that person was. And I think that's really important too for our friends who have suffered through tragedy, is remembering that person they loved and, you know, just being there to support them.
No, that is so helpful. And Laura, you were going to say something too.
Yeah, you know, and just letting them talk. And sometimes you can't find the right words. The right words are often very hard to find when you're talking to somebody who's grieving. And just, as Anna said, just being there to listen. And it's a reminder that life is short, and hold on to the moments that we have with our family and our friends and the things that we love tightly and dearly. And also, you know, down the road, not continuing to reach out to that person and being there for that person, asking, you know, not saying their name so they're not forgotten, that their loved one is still very much, as Anna was saying, in memory, and bringing it up again.
Yeah.
Well, I really appreciate, you know, the two of you and to talk about this, because of course I'd like to dedicate, you know, this show to Austin Paul, again, 25 years old, and you,
And his family.
Yes.
Yes,
May his
thank
memory
you.
be eternal.
May his memory be eternal. I really appreciate, again, you being on the show, sharing your journeys, and again, allowing me to rely on my friends to help me during, you know, this difficult time. But thank you both so much. We're going to go to a chroma key right now, because if you want to share this show or follow this show, I have all these different platforms that you could go. I usually am very lighthearted about this because I can't believe that I'm on all of these platforms. But anyway, thank you so much again for you guys being here. And again, our deepest condolences to the Paul family.
Yes, and we're saying our prayers for them.
Can I say 2 words?
Yes, absolutely, Sophia.
People remember to eat croissants.
Okay, all right. We love ending on a light note.
She lightens it up for us.
You
yes.
do.
But thank you so much
Of
for having
course.
us, and our thoughts and prayers are with your
Yes,
friends,
absolutely.
family, and
Thank you. Thank you.
so great for you to dedicate this to him as we talk about inspiration and beautiful things today.
Thank you so much.
So.
Thank you so much, everybody. And thank you so much, everybody, for watching. Have a great rest of the week, and we look forward to seeing you next week. And as Laura said, life is precious.
Yeah.
Gosh,
Yes.
hug those loved ones.
Live your dreams.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.